Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Nice to see your faces come in. Your photos of you, animal companions, smiling faces, and some of the smiling faces of my co-contributors here and co-creators of today's Sunday service. You are so welcome. Welcome any companions who are around you who would like to participate or observe today, or any wildlife who happen to be outside your windows, any animals or humans who are on your mind. Good afternoon and welcome to the Compassion Consortium. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen and I'm joined today by co-founders Victoria Moran and Reverend William Melton, alongside our irreplaceable Techie Phil, plus animal chaplains Jess Hoffman, Diane Waltner, and Terri Cornwell are in the house today. Dr. Christina Nellist is here as well as our special spiritual guest, and we're very excited about that. In order to ensure we don't have disruption during the service, we've turned off most of the Zoom sharing functions. We look forward to seeing you, though, and hearing your voices later during the fellowship time. We meet for Sunday service on the third Sunday of every month, so if you're new to us, welcome. We'd like to see you again. We're an interfaith, interspiritual, and interspecies community. And if those concepts sound new to you, well, I invite you to take a look at the link that I've just put in the chat. And for those of you watching the replay in the future, hello, future people, you can go to compassionconsortium.org/about. At the beginning of every Sunday service, I offer an acknowledgement to draw our awareness to the humans and other species who are indigenous to and currently present in whatever habitat I'm in. But this month, we're going to take a slightly different tack because as an interfaith community, there have been so many holy days that I'd like to call attention to. In the last 2 weeks, our pagan and Wiccan folks observed Imbolc, which is a celebration of the beginning of spring, featuring the goddess Brigid. And Buddhist folks might have observed Sangha Day, which is a celebration of community, or Parinirvana, which is an observance of the Buddha's attainment of final nirvana. Jewish folks may have observed Tu B'Shvat, which is a new year for trees. Yes, a new year for trees. Please go Google that one if you don't know about it. And our Muslim friends may have spent February 14th in prayer, observing the night of forgiveness and blessings, something we could all have a night of thinking about. February 14th is also known around my habitat as St. Valentine's Day. And it's a day my husband and I sneak off to some strange place where we can dedicate ourselves to each other. This year it was a helicopter, not a flying one, a helicopter on the ground. That's a story for another day. But it's a day where we ban our computers, we ban our phones, and we dedicate ourselves to our relationship to one another. And the entire month of February is Black History Month, which is also sometimes referred to as Black Heritage Month. I may have missed something you celebrated this month. So feel into that for a moment. What do you notice? What have you been celebrating, or what are you on the cusp of celebrating? I noticed as I wrote these together, a couple about the coming of spring, which those of us who just got buried under 6 inches of snow might be eagerly awaiting. I know I am. I also noticed the celebration of important ties to each other, to sanghas, to our mates, to our communities, to our lineages, to our heritage. And I noticed the celebration of values like forgiveness or the attainment of spiritual goals like nirvana. And above else, I observe that these holy days are ways for us to have awareness of what's important to the people around us. What are you making time for observing this month? Today, we're going to pick a couple of those threads up and weave through the service today. The first is Black History Month, and the second is the spirit of the Sangha Day celebration, which we'll talk about in our spiritual practice in just a bit. But let's start with the first. Phil, could you pull up slide 3 for me? Ah, there we go. There we go. Saint Martin de Porres, who was born in Lima, Italy in 1579 and is recognized as the first Black saint in the Americas. A person of blended ancestry, likely a blend of African American, Quechua, and Spanish, he faced significant racial discrimination throughout his life. Significant. Despite these challenges, he dedicated himself anyway to a life of humility, charity, and service, to a spiritual tradition that was important to him. He established an orphanage and a children's hospital, reflecting his commitment to social justice and the well-being of the marginalized. One intriguing aspect of his legacy for us to consider, you might see in the lower left-hand side. Did anyone notice the creatures? Typically, he is shown with a dog, a cat, and a mouse. Sometimes they're eating together from the same dish, symbolizing his ability to foster harmony among creatures who are typically seen as natural enemies, or so the art historians tell me. Due to his special rapport with animals, and some say communication with animals, he's considered a patron saint of animals, alongside his patronage of multiracial people and those seeking racial harmony. So here's my last question for us for pondering today. What would it look like for each of us to broaden our advocacy to include more species, perhaps mice or another species, and more types of humans than your advocacy already does? How do we include people that we might see as enemies, or at least the people we don't see like us, in our endeavors? It's something I'm thinking a lot about these days, and I hope you'll join me in that inquiry. Now over to Diane Waltner for our Tenets of Agreement. Diane is an ordained animal chaplain, a vegan lifestyle coach and educator, and an animal Reiki practitioner. She's currently fostering 2 beautiful black cats who she says are a constant source of joy, companionship, and cuddling. Diane, take it away.
Thank you. At the beginning of each Sunday service, we remind ourselves of the tenets of agreement, which this community strives to uphold. Each month, we focus on one tenet. This month, it's tenet number 2. As I read the words aloud, we encourage everyone to take time to contemplate how the tenets can impact and influence your daily life. If you are unfamiliar with all 10 of our tenets, please read the full list at the link just placed in the chat. Tenet 2. We recognize the common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. Let's take a moment to mindfully meditate on this idea. And now back over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Diane. And yes, folks, the link to our entire 10 Tenets of Agreement is in the chat. And now for our spiritual practice. Now, normally we do an interspecies spiritual practice that's mindfulness or meditation. We might be chanting shalom with sheep. We might be doing walking meditation with ducks. Who knows? We've done all sorts of things. You can check those out on our YouTube channel. But today we're going to do something a little different. We are very excited about what's going on with our current cohort of the Animal Chaplaincy Training Program. And so our practice today is called Celebrating Ophidia. Ophidia being the name of a group of snakes, and our class being a group of snakes because this is the Lunar New Year, and we name our groups based on the animals in the Lunar New Year. Participants in the program are completing their 6th month in the program this month. From here, some will go on to complete independent projects, and others will remain with us in animal chaplaincy training for the next 3 months, completing unique capstones and other requirements for being considered for ordination by this organization. It's an important time, a sensing into their unique calls to serve the more than just human world. Over the past 6 months, they've deepened their ability to companion animals and humans through conflicts, and we know there are a lot of conflicts out there, folks, and they've expanded their knowledge about the complexity of human-animal bonds. They've read oodles of papers and articles, watched TED Talks, spent over 72 hours in classes as a cohort with us, watched lectures and movies. They've written reflections, created interspecies spiritual practices themselves, some of which you'll see in the next coming months. They've created beautiful memorials. They've done their own inner work, right? We all know about inner work, as well as chaplaincy practica with others. They have been so busy. And along the way, they give our program team great hope for what can be accomplished in attending to and healing and supporting human relationships with other species. I'd like to invite our ACT program coordinator, Rev. Marshall Hammer, to offer a few words about her experience of this group, and then we'll do our practice.
Thanks, Sarah. The Ophidia cohort gives me hope. It's not just their dedication or their enthusiastic engagement that stands out to me. What I believe will help them make a great impact in our world is their courage in learning to sit with uncertainty, to face the complex questions that arise in animal chaplaincy with both humility and determination. And keep in mind, they were each positively impacting the world before we met them. Over the past 6 months, this group has reinforced their wisdom to pause, reflect, and acknowledge that sometimes there is not a simple answer to questions brought up from the heart. Their willingness to engage with the challenging ethical and spiritual dimensions of animal chaplaincy speaks volumes about their character. They've grown not despite the difficulties, but because of them. I can't express enough how proud I am of each of them. Watching you navigate this journey, embracing the challenges, supporting each other, and emerging stronger has been inspiring. Your growth, both individually and as a group, and the depth of your commitment to this work is remarkable to witness. As we celebrate their certification today, I'm filled with optimism about the future of animal chaplaincy. This cohort has shown that this field will be served by professionals who bring not only their knowledge and skills, but also their whole hearts to this vital work. And all the animals and humans they'll work with will gain the benefit.
Thank you, Marshall. So beautifully said. So our practice for them is inspired by Sangha Day, as I mentioned, a day of celebrating community. In Buddhism, definitions of a Sangha vary, but one includes this: a supportive community for mindfulness and ethical living that acts as a source of guidance, inspiration, and wisdom, and that encourages multiple mutual moral support and spiritual friendship. And I think this definition certainly fits our cohort, Ophidia. On Sangha Day in countries like Thailand, in the Wiantian procession, and I hope I pronounced that with some excellence there. If not, folks, feel free to let me know how to better pronounce it in the future. Monks and lay people walk around a temple 3 times in a clockwise direction, carrying candles, flowers, and incense, one each to honor the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
That practice inspires us today to light 3 candles in gratitude for the generosity of our entire ACT team, for our participants' inspired calls to multi-species service, and for the Compassion Consortium's support of this innovative program?
This slide shows our ACT team, the folks who help support Marshall and I and provide their unique offerings to the cohort. We have been absolutely blessed to have them with us each year. So our first blessing will be for them. May you be blessed with wisdom, patience, and compassion. May your teachings bring light to those who seek knowledge. May your heart remain open and your mind clear. May you always find joy in the path of guiding others. And may the merit of your work bring peace to all beings, regardless of species.
And I offer blessings for the Ophidia cohort. May your mind be open to learning and your heart open to kindness. May patience and perseverance guide you in your studies. May obstacles become opportunities for growth. And may your journeys bring you peace and ongoing inspiration.
Finally, we offer blessings for the broader Compassion Consortium community, including all of you here today, all of you watching in the future, our ACT alumni, and for friends and family of the ACT Ophidia cohort, human and other than human alike. May those who support this learning community be blessed with wisdom and compassion. May your generosity bring you peace and joy. May your kindness be a source of merit for countless lifetimes. And may your good deeds benefit all beings in this multi-species world. Thank you all for joining us in this practice. We are so delighted to share a little bit about this amazing group, to have you start to see their faces. We hope you will see much more of their faces around here. And you certainly will during our June Sunday service, where you'll get to know some of these folks. We'll share their practices. You'll get to know them by name and by their calling, what they're going out to do in the world during our ordination celebration. But for now, Victoria, over to you.
Yeah, well, this is going to be so interfaith. I get so excited when I get to be here for our interview every month today I am particularly on fire for the whole interfaith thing because just this morning I was at a wonderful experience where a Hindu monk was interviewing a Jesuit priest. So maybe I'm the only person who gets to do something like this twice in one day, but it's a pretty cool thing to see boundaries just melt and interest and spiritual growth take hold. So our guest today, and thanks to Reverend Sarah for meeting this wonderful woman when she was at Oxford a couple of summers ago. So our guest is Christina Nellist, Ph.D., an Eastern Orthodox theologian specializing in animal suffering and human salvation. She is co-founder and president of the Pan-Orthodox Concern for Animals charity and a board member of both the Animal Interfaith Alliance UK and the Orthodox Fellowship of the Transfiguration in the US. Welcome, Dr. Nellist.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, and
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thank you for staying up late. She's in the UK, and so it's a nighttime there. So we have such a short amount of time. I'm going to jump in, and I'll jump in with the biggest, broadest question. And if you just want to give me one sentence or whatever's on your mind, that's all fine. But just help us understand in this history of Christianity, give us a little history of the Orthodox Church.
Well, the Orthodox Church is I don't wish to offend anybody when I say these words, but I'm going to say them anyway, is the earliest Christian church. There were 4 main centers of Christianity: Jerusalem, obviously, then Antioch, then Alexandria, and then Rome. This is where all the disciples of Christ, they spread out and went on their ways. And then when the emperor Constantine,
Yes.
he moved the capital of the Roman Empire to Constantinople in his name. So then there were 5 centers, and each of them had a pope, or what we call in the Eastern Orthodox patriarch. So the Patriarch of Rome, Patriarch of Alexandria, and so on. There are still those popes or patriarchs, as we call them in Eastern Orthodoxy. And then you have the Pope of Rome in the West, but one of the others are Eastern. So that's where we are. He called the very first council, called everybody together in 300 and something, 325, I think, the Council of Nicaea, to make sure that everybody was teaching the same stuff. So, because as we know, you can go your own way and then things start to change. There were 7 of these councils. The last one was in 700 and something, right? And that was the last time that all of the popes or patriarchs came together. And Eastern Orthodoxy is stuck to the doctrines of those 7 councils. And then there was a big schism around the turn of the century. It had been coming for centuries. But so you have, you still have all these different bishops. They're all equal, but it was recognized by everyone because of Christ saying that upon this rock I will build my church, that Peter had a special place. The bishop, he went to Rome. So we sort of seeing them as first among equals is the phrase that tends to be. It's a conciliar church where nobody has ruling over the others. That's how it's done. So that's what Eastern Orthodoxy is. And if there is a dispute that cannot be sorted, then they would go to the Bishop of Rome, rather like a chairman in a committee, and he would have the final vote. So that is Christianity in a 1-minute TED talk, if you want to call it that. We could spend a week talking about it.
Well, I hope you do the TED talk, but we got it first. So thank you.
Yeah,
That's so helpful.
I haven't done one, but that's the essence of Christianity. That's why we have these big Christian centers, and they're still in existence today.
Yes. So can you encapsulate, as brilliantly as you have done the history, the belief system of Orthodox Christianity?
Well, again, there was a schism earlier on, but we won't go into that. And that gives you the Eastern Oriental churches over the natures of Christ, God, man, and so forth. But the rest of Christianity will say that I believe in a triune God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, living in harmony, perfect harmony and love. And that is the essence of Christianity. Christ is the Son of God, and Christ became man in order to save the humans, the only of his creatures that disobeyed him. The rest of the created order carried on in obedience to him. And this is said by the fathers in the early church, which is why we believe in, we would also not just take the biblical texts, we also take the teachings of the fathers. Well, for example, Polycarp was the apostle of St. John. Now, who would disregard what Polycarp had to say? He'd sat at the feet of St. John, who sat at the feet of Jesus. So we also give great credence to their teachings. And then Christ's death and resurrection, because he took on flesh and became human, he became part of the created world. In so doing, he has redeemed everything. All of the creatures that God had made are redeemed in Christ and will be there in the second coming. Now, that's not to say that this is what you've always heard, but basically this is the tenets of Christianity, heavily influenced, I have to say, by much philosophy from Aristotle and Plato, which causes distortion, but we'll come on to that perhaps later. But that's the basic stuff.
Oh, well, utterly fascinating, and not necessarily the way we have always heard it, especially with the redemption of all creatures. Although I think I may remember something about that once or twice in Catholic school before they passed around the chipped beef on toast. But just for you personally, Dr. Nellist, what led you to include non-human beings in your personal circle of compassion?
Oh, well, I thought about this and I came to the conclusion actually that there's never been a time when they weren't. When we're young, when we're very young, we don't think along those terms, do we? But really, my cousin would put a worm in a jar, jam jar, you know, put holes in it, or a butterfly. And I was horrified at that. I ran in, you know, and say, they've got to stop them doing that. Little things like that, I could see immediately that it was wrong. Something was wrong. I didn't understand why. I had no teachings on this, but just instinctively it seemed wrong. So, you know, and then that sort of awareness grew. And in the 60s, I was working in a bank in the city of London. And I read a newspaper article on the Canadian seal hunt. That's how long it's been going. And I was compelled to act. There was no wring of hands. No, I just knew I had to do something. So I stood in the streets of London. At the time, men were wearing bowler hats, like you see in them old movies. I'm old, you know, so I gingerly would call out to them, would you please sign my petition? So, and again, there was no history of that in my family. There was none of that. It was just instinctively to me that I had to act. And then it's been my life. I mean, it's just who I am. And I'm 72, coming up 73 now, and it's no different. I should be doing this until I drop.
Yes. Yeah, once it gets you, there's no.
I have no idea where this is God's work here. This is a cross. We all know this. This is tough work. I've done frontline stuff in many of the countries I've lived, and in this country, in England. We have I was a rehoming officer for the RSPCA at one point while I was teaching. Seen some awful stuff.
Yes.
You know, and it's not getting any better. So, but it's the same stuff around the world, you know. It's everywhere. It's evil. It's a form. It's a manifestation of evil, and we need to remember that. It's
Yes.
the same evil that is against women. It's the same
Mhm.
evil that's against men. It's the same evil that's against children. It
Yes.
is the same evil in a different guise. That's all.
So in your view, or the view of your faith, or just you personally, do you believe that animals have souls? And should the answer to that question have any bearing on how we treat them?
Well, I don't tend to plug my work, but if you look on our website, this is my book, and in fact, on this particular one, Eastern Orthodoxy and Animal Suffering, Ancient Voices in Modern Theology, I did some research in Cyprus, and I took from the animal protectionists and so forth, and then I went to the church with this, and they were horrified at what was being said. And when you put them together, when I analyzed them, they were saying the same stuff, same things. They didn't know it because they didn't talk to each other. I then took that and went to Metropolitan Christos, who I work very closely with. And it was one of the questions I put to him, because it was said in one of the schools by a Cypriot teacher of, you won't say theology, but a religious teacher there, that it didn't matter what you did to animals because they didn't have souls. And they were horrified, the church was horrified. And Metropolitan Christos said, it doesn't matter whether an animal is ensouled or not. So I would say yes, and the church will say yes, but I'm afraid we do have this terrible hang up with the teachings of the Greek philosophers. But then you have to know what they meant by souls and rationality. So Aristotle, I mean, you know, he was so wrong on so many levels with his science. And we now know that the criteria used to decide what has a soul and a rational soul or not, many of the animals, increasingly each year, more species are added, meet that criteria. So yes, we can say they are sold, but the bottom line is, as Callistos, Metropolitan Callistos, that's a red herring. It muddies the water, and it's done deliberately, I think, by some to do just that, to try to elevate humans above the rest. There's no need to denigrate the rest of creation to elevate us. We have a special role. It's called image of God. No other creature has this. But there's a reason for that. We're supposed to act on his behalf, as he does. And we can come to that perhaps. But yes, they have souls. What type of soul? That's debatable. Clearly, in my mind, they have a rational soul because they are rational creatures. But we already know in the Bible, it tells us that animals will be there in the second coming. We already know through Christ that all things are redeemed through him. So the business of whether they have souls or not is irrelevant to the way we treat them. And this is said in my book. The church says this. Cruelty is evil. Cruelty is against the teachings of our Christian God, who is an all-loving and compassionate God. And it's an evil that we need to stand against. So that should have nothing to do with the way we treat the animals. But of course, many people use that excuse to treat them in a very bad way.
Yes.
And we're very good at that, are we not?
We have. I completely agree with you that they are indeed soulful creatures. But for sake of argument, if they didn't, then we should treat them even better, because this would be their only chance to experience joy.
Yeah,
So,
you could argue that. You could
had
argue.
a
I mean,
few arguments.
ultimately, this is not a doctrine. This is opinion.
Mm.
This is not discussed in the church. It wasn't that they were not interested. They had other things to sort out. They were teaching, who is Christ? What is he? What is the triune? What is the Trinity? Who is God? this is what they were trying to sort out. They didn't say anything, not because they weren't interested. And when they did say, they said some wonderful things. You know, again, in my book, I've got a lot of stuff. Some of the early fathers say wonderful things.
Yes.
We don't have to wait. We don't have to wait for St. Francis, who is 1,000 odd years later.
Yes.
These guys are saying it right at the beginning.
Well, they were, and there were so many, certainly vegetarians in the early church.
Yeah, they were.
So do you have a story or somebody that you like in particular, one of the early church fathers or perhaps mothers who had something to say about animals?
Not in the sense of not vegetarians or vegan. I mean, you know, there wasn't a great deal of food to go around. Many of them went into the desert. I mean, we can look at diet, and you can look at the Bible there. God only gives us vegan food. He doesn't, there's nothing there. I mean, there is honey. So, I mean, some people might say that wouldn't be something that they would have. But I think we have to look at what maybe that was like then and what it's like now, perhaps. But anyway, regardless of that.
Yes.
There are so many. But what you do find is that what the fathers say about the saints and their closeness with animals is that the animals recognize. They say that they recognize the scent of Adam. They recognize the prelapsarian human in the saints, in their closeness with the animals. So it shows that we can return to a pre-fall existence. It is possible, even on this earth, at this time, we can show love and compassion. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I have animals coming up to me all the time. And when I lived in other countries, even wild animals. We're not afraid of them. We have to treat them with respect, treat them with honor, respect them. You know, they're sacred creatures as we are. And the fathers, the early saints, even modern day saints, you'll find these ones that, like St. Seraphim in Russia, feeding his friend the bear. You know, right throughout history, that closeness is the animals recognizing the purity of heart of those who show compassion to animals.
Oh, that's beautiful. So in our last couple of minutes, you established Pan-Orthodox Concern for Animals in 2017. So tell us your motivation for that and the aims of the organization and how we might be part of it.
Well, again, I was the first, I say that with a bit of hesitancy, because I did work closely with Metropolitan Callistos on before he died, on his private library. And I found a text that he wrote back in 1963. So he had written on something similar to what I was doing. And when I met him, he said, I've been waiting. And I thought, well, I'm not late. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what he meant. But he was just waiting for somebody to come along to deal specifically with the animals. Because what we've got is wonderful teachings on the environment. We have the ecumenical patriarch in Constantinople, one of the popes that I was talking about, the spiritual leader, if you like, of Orthodoxy. For decades now has been talking on the environment. Very little was said on animals. And so I was the first really to sort of bring the theology together. And it occurred to me that we needed a space also like Catholic Concern for Animals, like the Anglicans and others have gone before us. We needed a space where we could inform our own people about their own theology, that it was not new. This has been from the earliest times of the church, continuing through to today. We have teachings that it is a sin to harm animals. So we have, you know, really very good teachings from popes telling us this. And that it's also a place for, because in that book, again, it deals with lots of animal protection issues. So I try to bridge the gap between the two and make the chasm try to bridge that gap so that the animal protectionists know that there are texts there that they can go to the church and say, look, what are you doing about this? It says so and so. Saint Athanasius said this, and Isaac said this. And so this is what I thought we needed a platform for. And it's really to inform, to teach, to bridge a gap, and to make other theologians engage with the subject so we could develop an animal theology in Eastern Orthodoxy. And that's what we continue to do, and opportunities like this. And I was very happy to engage with Barbara at Animal Interfaith Alliance, because I don't believe that one faith has all the answers to everything. I think God can manifest in many different forms, in any way he so chooses, because if there is a God who created the universe, who are we to say that he will only speak to this or that person? So I'm very much interested in ecumenical and interfaith.
Yes.
Learn the golden rule
Yeah.
there from Athanasius and Irenaeus. It's there right from the beginning of the church. And as we know, in other faiths.
Yes. And what a dazzling way to end it all. I think if we could just ripple some of that out into the world, which is exactly what you're doing with your wonderful work and what we're trying to do too, those ripples are going to get pretty big and meet one another and change the world for animals. So thank you so very much, Doctor. Thank you for being with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
And back to Reverend Sarah.
So Phil is now turning on the ability to chat, and for you folks to turn on your videos. Please enter any blessings or prayers you'd like witnessed by this community in the chat. This is something that we do every month. We know you have things on your mind in terms of losses you may have had, or advocacy concerns of things going on, or joyous things that may have happened as well. And feel free to support each other in the threaded chat there. While you do that, or start to do that, I want to share some good news. We always share one bit of good news. We know there's more than just one, but good news, I think. The Humane Society of the United States and the Humane Society International are rebranding together into Humane World for Animals to better communicate their mission as a global all animals focus to people who may not know about their ever expanding focus to, they say, quote, tackle the root causes of animal cruelty and suffering to create permanent change, end quote. The consortium will once again be participating in their annual conference for animal advocates, activists, and care professionals this August with a team of 6 volunteer animal chaplains who will be joining me in Vegas. So Vegas, here we come. We might, that cursing in kangaroo or orangutan may come in handy perhaps over there. However, we will be there supporting all of the people who are doing good work out there in activism, in advocacy, in animal care, and all of the conflicts and all of the challenges, who need someone to talk to and who need to share their stories to and need to be validated and receive some support. So we'll be there doing that. If you'd like to hear a little bit more from what the Humane World for Animals, it's going to take me a little while to get used to saying that. They put out a 2-minute video if you want to take a look at that to see what they're including in their concerns. And now, Phil, if you could bring up Reverend Terri Cornwell, and she will be doing our final blessing here. Reverend Terri Cornwell, Ph.D., has more than 40 years of experience teaching in public and private universities. She is the author of Democracy in the Arts, The Role of Participation, and a variety of book chapters and articles on communication and the arts. She's an ordained Presbyterian USA pastor and was also ordained as an animal chaplain in the first class of Compassion Consortium's animal chaplaincy program. She is a rabbit, as we refer to our that cohort. She and her husband live in Forest, Virginia, with their rescued ragdoll cat. Terri, handing this over to you, and Phil, if you could bring up Terri's tree.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. As Reverend Sarah said, I live in Forest, Virginia, which is just outside of Lynchburg, Virginia, right in the heart, the center of the state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia. And we live quite near to a place called Poplar Forest, which is Thomas Jefferson's summer home when he wanted to get away from the urban area of Monticello. He would come out here to Poplar Forest. We're surrounded by a lot of oak trees. And my husband and I and our family have lived in Central Virginia. You can see the Blue Ridge Mountains through the trees there for 25 years. And that beautiful oak tree was with us for 25 years and was probably coming on 200 years. But because of the drought over the last couple of years, and among other things, we had to say goodbye to that beautiful tree. And I felt called to bless the tree before it was taken down. And this is a blessing for the oak tree. Creator of all things, from whom all life flows, we humbly ask your blessing on one of your most majestic life forms. The years on earth for this precious oak tree have come to an end, but we know that its roots buried deep beneath have always and will continue to nourish all the other life forms surrounding them. We are grateful for the many years this tree has given to our beautiful area of Central Virginia. It began as a tiny acorn, growing into a tree whose branches have shaded deer, squirrels, rabbits, perhaps even foxes and bears long before humans walked beneath its loving arms. The birds who have found homes among its leaves are innumerable, and its shade has been enjoyed by our family for more than 2 decades, just a small portion of the years this tree has been alive. We ask that you bless this oak and the many other trees guarding the soil and grasses that work together to nourish our delicate ecosystem. May more and more people learn how valuable are all the parts of our environment and become advocates for all living creatures like our glorious oak trees. May our care of creation be worthy of the love that you have shown in giving us life, and may our relationships with all creatures mirror that love. Give us strength and understanding to care for all living species you have given us. May it be so. Amen.
May it be so indeed. Thank you, Terri, for that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful blessing. Wonderful. And adding to our thoughts here of blessing, of prayer into this space from our chat, prayers for Ellie Pup, who's going through a difficult health crisis. Also, prayers for the puppy sitting of a border collie mix that Debbie and the Fur Gang will be doing. Bless for homes that are in danger of flooding and all those dealing with disasters. I'm going to add, or high winds, like Rev Marshall has been navigating today. Prayers for animals in war-torn countries. Praying for the coyotes and the dogs in the Liberty Village, Toronto, that there be peace with the animals and that Toronto responds peacefully. Absolutely. We continue prayers for Rev William, who started this all, who had the idea for the Compassion Consortium in 2019, and without whom we would not be here. None of what we were talking about today would be happening. William has aphasia, and dealing with language is very difficult for him. It can get better, though. And so he is in therapy, and we pray very much that with his work and with the support of Spirit and God, all things are possible. Absolutely. And prayers for Victoria, who is helping manage all of the different things that go into this with William. Prayers for a foster former street kitty who needs to find his human soulmate. And also finally, just want to share that Animal Chaplain Deb Benario, who is here with us today, who is at the Zelma congregation, an amazing Quaker community, that their grief and recovery congregants held a love and light in remembrance for their rescue cat, Adem, and prayers are asked for their loving boy and a new rescue cat, Scotty, who survived an attack by an urban dog pack. Ouch! And now has an amputated tail. Double ouch! He has a long road to recovery ahead, but lots of support from colony cats and volunteers. Folks, if your prayer was not in the chat, but it was in your mind today, we offer that up into this community. The moment of silence. Thank you all for joining us for Sunday service. Please stick around for fellowship, folks, right after some short announcements about some interesting things coming up, as well as an announcement from our advisory board chair, Dave Simon, and then a few more from Animal Chaplain Jess Hoffman, and then we'll be getting into some fellowship groups. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, my friends. It might come as a surprise to you that it's not free for the consortium to put this wonderful service on every month. There are bunches of expenses that stack up, and we're fortunate and grateful that in the past, donors have contributed generously to make it possible for us to be here this Sunday. And the great thing is, we now have the opportunity to do the same thing for next month's program. In other words, we can donate today and make it possible for next month's attendees, possibly even including you, your future self, to be here and enjoy the same level of wonderful, rich spiritual content. It's super easy to donate. You can take your phone right now, scan the QR code you're looking at. You can click on the link in the chat that Sarah has just put there. And if it takes you a second to navigate the PayPal process, and perhaps you lose that process, you can always go to compassionconsortium.org, scroll to the bottom, and there's a donate button. Thank you so much for your generosity and for paying it forward and for allowing us to do this again next month. And now over to Jess, who has some announcements about upcoming events before we go to fellowship. Thanks.
In our March Sunday service, our spiritual guest will be Tams Nicholson, OFS, a compassionate leader with a proven record of success in startups, advocacy, empowering successful teams, nurturing youth, mentoring, and designing successful community change strategies. After spending a decade in the for-profit sector, she was inspired by a life-changing experience and left the corporate world to dedicate the rest of her career to lifting others up in the nonprofit sector. Since then, she has held nonprofit leadership roles in the vegan and animal rights movement, disaster services, and drug prevention. She is a professed Third Order Franciscan and holds certifications in somatic attachment therapy, instructional technology, teaching, prevention, advocacy, and disaster services. Ms. Nicholson adopted an ethical vegan lifestyle in 2008. In our monthly newsletters, we highlight different compassionate actions people in the Compassion Consortium community are taking. If you have a compassion and action you'd like to share, please submit it to compassionconsortium@gmail.com. Engaged members, join Rev Marshall for an immersive practice on Tuesday, March 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to explore honoring our heart's callings. In this contemplative practice, You'll explore paths to service related to animals with a focus on how to balance your physical and mental well-being for resiliency to avoid burnout. And don't forget our monthly recurring gatherings for vegan meditation, activist well-being, and pet loss support. Details are always available on compassionconsortium.org's event page and in the monthly newsletter. Please note that starting next month, vegan meditation will be changing its meeting length from 30 to 45 minutes and its meeting frequency from weekly to the first and the third Monday of each month.